Strangest things you found as corners that were called for?
Well, I don't know. One of the things I think that people always said they had more validity than anything else, and it doesn't, of course, but is a gun barrel. A lot of people said an old gun barrel for a corner. You see, and find that they know where the gun barrel corner is, and of course they use buggy axles and things like that. Something that was substantial that they had put for their corners. Rock mounds were one of the things. Pine knot was used for a corner. You don't know what a pine knot is, do you?
Explain to people. There might be people all over the world watching.
Well, these are natural pine knots, and natural knots. We used to, when I first started surveying, when you go to set a corner, I'd just tell the boys, I'd say, look at it and go find us a pine knot for a corner. Well, they'd look out there just a few feet and they'd find one of these knots. It was all for the, because these were piney woods. And that's just a natural corner knot, you know. And we might take it and cut it off square and put a tack in it like this one does have a tack in the top of it.
Right.
But these were plentiful in the early days, and they're not now. You very seldom find pine knots anymore because they gathered them up and made turpentine out of them.
The reason is because they were so concentrated with the pine oil?
Yes.
How come they were able to survive so long?
Of course, the trees, the original trees we had were the longleaf pine trees. And they used to cut them off with a crosscut saw when they logged them. And they'd cut them off by the high top of this table. They'd stand there and saw that thing off. Well, those old stumps would have stayed there forever. I mean, you'd be stumps, you know, this big around from pine trees, and they were just solid. I mean, you talk about solid, they are solid. And, but the companies began to sell that off to a turpentine maker over here in Louisiana. And they came in and with dynamite and bulldozers and bulldozed, blew up those stumps, got about, and hauled off all of that, and they had hauled off all the pine knots they found as well, and that went into the turpentine plant over in Darrell, Louisiana, and they made turpentine from that. So you very seldom ever find. We used to love to see pines bark for bearing trees because a longleaf pine, they had nearly as much sticking down as they did stick it up. They had about a 40-foot taproot that'd go down in the ground, and so even if they cut this thing off, and even if it burned off, years later, that thing got on fire, it burned forever. But if it burned down, that taproot was down in the ground. You see, and we could go back and still find
excavate down and actually find the top of the
right. Or
has that happened where you found a corner that you determined was a survey corner because you excavated and found the bottom of found the top of a roof?
Right. I've done that many times, and if we normally what we would do would just shave off the top of the ground, and if it had burned out of there, well, you'd see that black round circle where that charcoal was, where that stump was in this area, and you'd go back to the stump and back up from these stumps. And many times.
What era were they using pine knots as corners from your studies and your knowledge as a land surveyor here in Texas?
I'd say from the beginning of survey work in when they laid out the original surveys here in Texas up until the late 50s, 1950s. Mm-hmm. They were here because I started in business in, I started surveying in 1948, but all through the years with Kirby Lumber Corporation and so forth, well, the pine knots were plentiful and stuff like that, you know, but they started logging, or getting the pine in about in the middle 50s somewhere, and by the early 60s it was pretty well all gone.
And that's when people started setting like iron pipes,
mm-hmm.
and that became more prevalent, or concrete, whatever, not more substantial.
We used to take, this was so plentiful, that we'd cut off a pine stump or a log, and it's you talk about solid, it's solid, and we'd haul those into the office. I had a barn behind the old office, and on rainy days I'd have the boys sit out there, and we made hubs from this pine. And those things would last forever, you know. I know an old man started surveying here in 1931 for American Republic, so that's all he set was pine knots. they made them from the rich lighted pine, and some of those things are still out there in the ground.